What are you hiding?
A lot of things, as it turns out. In 2018, it seemed like Mozambique had closed the doors on Elly's murder forever. But in 2020, Paul would accept the help of a German private investigator and uncover an even darker truth behind the death of his daughter. When Paul Warren appeared on Sky News Australia in 2021, he had pretty interesting news for all those who cared about Elly. In June 2020, a private investigator called Nick Greger contacted Paul asking him if he could get involved in Elly's case. He'd seen Paul's appearance on 60 Minutes Australia and wanted to get to the bottom of the story. Nick had a history of investigating major cover-ups in Africa and the Middle East, involving criminal networks and corrupt or under-resourced police teams. So in every way, Nick was the right man for the job. He began his covert operation from his home in Germany. This was happening during the COVID-19 pandemic, and he wasn't allowed to travel to Africa at the time. First, he wanted to plant an illegal nighttime worker in the court of a local kingpin. She would befriend him and record him, hoping for a confession. He'd received a tip from a South African woman holidaying in Tofo. She'd been warned to stay away from a group of people that locals thought were responsible for Elly's murder. It was a notorious gang known for distributing illegal substances and regular violence and robberies. So a criminal network, Nick Greger's specialty. To infiltrate the gang, he contacted African women with backgrounds involving these rings. He spoke to them via Zoom and asked them whether they would be interested in befriending a lord as a part of a covert operation and murder investigation. Although a few women volunteered, Nick only chose the woman who didn't seem scared at all. 2 weeks after taking the job, the woman infiltrated the ring and befriended the leader. Soon enough, he talked, unaware that he was being recorded.
Come with the dirtiest ghetto in Africa, where I come from. Do what you want to do, I'll show you who I am. It's like, now I can call you, now I can say, hey, amore, hey, ¿qué pasa? I can't say that, because I kill you.
This was the famous Tofo crime lord bragging about killing people, robbing tourists, and distributing illegal substances wherever he pleased. As soon as she received this partial confession, the infiltrated woman went back to her hometown under Nick's protection. The crime lord might not have confessed to murdering Elly himself, but what was certain was that he and his ring robbed and killed a fair amount of tourists. So the running theory is that Elly was first robbed by the crime lord or his gang on the night of her last party in Mozambique. When she resisted, she was violated and killed. Then they took her body to a public place where the police could frame an overdose. What better place than a public toilet, right? Sadly, if this theory is true, it just goes to show how corrupt the Mozambique police is. If the criminals knew that dumping Elly's body would ensure a cover-up, then this is a typical procedure, and the local police protect its criminal gangs. Or perhaps it's so desperate not to lose tourists that whenever one dies, they will do whatever they can to say it wasn't murder. If the tourists got intoxicated and passed out, that's not the country's fault, is it? Imagine how infuriating it must be to learn about all these as the grieving family of Elly. Needless to say, once he had Nick's report, Paul went to the Australian embassy in Pretoria, South Africa. There, he presented them with unavoidable facts. They couldn't still refuse to act. The Mozambique authorities would never invite Australian authorities over if they weren't pressured. But in February 2021, it finally happened. Paul received a call from the Australian Federal Police. They'd been ordered by a coroner to travel to Mozambique to investigate Elly's death.